Hi, I'm Darrious Hilmon, in for the vacationing Andy Zopp, and this is the spring season premiere of Chicago Newsroom 2.0. In today's Roundtable segment, we'll take a closer look at the latest news coming out of CPS, CTA, and the Chicago Bears, with two of our favorite journalists, Francia Garcia Hernandez and Deborah Douglas. But first, I'll sit one-on-one with the board chair of Spanish Coalition for Housing, discussing the organization's efforts to grow the number of homeowners in Chicago. We'll get started on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. Join me Mondays at 7 p.m. for Behind the Confident Smile as I sit in conversation with incredible, dynamic, and complex Chicagoans who peel back the layers, living lessons, the joy, and the pain behind their confident smiles. You can watch on CanTV 19, cantv.org, and CanTV Plus app.
In 2023, Spanish Coalition for Housing assisted nearly 200 families purchase their first homes, provided rental and mortgage assistance to nearly 450 households, and provided counseling and resources to nearly 300 households, all in an effort to preserve housing and prevent foreclosures. Joining me to share more about the important work and mission of this critical organization, Spanish Coalition for Housing, is its board chair, Paul Lopez, my new friend. How are you, sir? Welcome to the newsroom.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good. Let's get started. Share with our viewers who may not know, what is the mission and some of the key initiatives and work of Spanish Coalition for Housing?
So Spanish Coalition for Housing, let's say SCH to make our lives easier.
Okay.
Their mission is to increase affordable home ownership throughout the Chicagoland area, Collier counties, and Northwest Indiana, while at the same time helping to preserve the housing that's here and the homeowners that currently struggle, helping them stay in their homes.
Okay. And following up on that, what are, as it relates to finding and keeping homes, which I think we all can agree, we've been having these conversations, we'll be having a lot of conversations about housing. It is a basic human right and necessity. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of need, without it, how is anything else possible? So with that said, tell me and our viewers, what are some of the key things you're finding that's hindering the effort to put Chicagoans, to help them find homes and keep homes? What are some of those issues, systemic and otherwise?
Currently, there's a shortage of inventory for quote-unquote affordable housing, right? That's a whole nother subject. Mm-hmm. Additionally, for those homeowners that are currently, working hard and trying to go paycheck to paycheck to make things work, a rise in real estate taxes has created a crisis. Mm-hmm. And so those individuals now are scrambling to find ways to cope and deal with those increases. So Spanish Coalition for Housing has come in and has programs available, both educational and can provide additional assistance when necessary to help preserve those homeowners.
Okay. Tell us about the components of both the home buyer and the homeowner program, and what specific tools you're hoping to empower Chicagoans with in those programs.
The first and foremost is, SCH is the premier housing organization that's HUD certified here. Mm-hmm. And what they want to do is provide that education that's critical for people to buy a home. Studies have found year after year and decade after decade, those with home buyer education usually are more successful because they have that knowledge. Additionally, it's not just buying the home, it's also those post-purchase areas that are so critical. So Spanish Coalition for Housing also provides post-purchase counseling, helping everywhere from home repair to utility assistance and additional education for home buyers as they're moving through the process. So it's not just bringing them in, we also want to make sure that they're able to stay for the long term.
Full disclosure to our viewers, in addition to being the chair of this incredible organization's board, we are also connected through CAN TV's incredible partnership with Old National Bank.
Correct.
Where you are what is your role there as well?
My role is Vice President, Community Development Manager.
So your passion and vocation are connected. This is a deeply important issue to you, both through the work you're paid for, and I always say about volunteers, especially board members, the work that you were actually paying to do.
Yes.
So why does this matter to you? Is there personal history? What is driving your passion for this work, even on your spare time volunteering, no less, to be a chair of the board?
My passion is driven by I would say my parents, but also how much the community gave to me. I grew up in the back of the arts community.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, we had a community. You had a parish, you had a park district that was involved, that was easily accessible. So I was able to pair what I do at the bank along with what I feel is, my mission in life, and that's to help others create homeownership opportunities and create healthy communities throughout Chicagoland. I love the city. I love our neighborhoods. I love our people. And it's a passion that I've always had, and I've always been fortunate enough to be able to follow professionally and on a volunteer basis.
Got it. We had this, you and I just talked about this. Does Chicago have a housing crisis or an affordable housing crisis, or some combination of both? Because I've heard folks, even on this very program, talk about the wonderful inventory of housing in Chicago. So where is the gap happening? If in one respect we're hearing folks go, Chicago has, as other cities are struggling, Chicago has great inventory of housing. Is the gap because that housing is not designed to serve the working class family?
I would say the prices have gotten that high where they're not able to serve the working class family. Additionally, you have the pressure of higher interest rates and higher real estate taxes. So add all those factors in, and that makes affordable home ownership even further away from people to be able to come into the mainstream and be able to purchase.
In your opinion, was it ever in reach? Was affordable? I'm still trying to understand the definition of affordable housing. So I hear about things turning office space in downtown LaSalle into housing, reconfiguring, rethinking post-pandemic. And I'll hear we're going to put 20% aside or this much aside. When we hear that, viewers at home, are they even remotely, when they talk about affordable housing, are they remotely referring to the folks that your organization is supporting, or are they using affordable housing in the most generous definition of the term?
I think it's a little bit of both. However, I'll lean towards the most generous definition. And the reason I say that is when you hear about affordable housing and the set-asides, what some people don't understand is that when a developer puts up a large-scale development, and they say they're setting aside 20%, they can actually pay into a fund instead of building 20% of affordable housing. They could simply pay into a fund, and then circumvent what's the reality is building that housing. So that's a loophole that I believe we should close.
And I won't even insult you with asking the question of how in the world does anyone think that's okay? I won't do that. You did say something to me when we were prepping that stopped me cold, having worked in nonprofit for so much of my career and really understanding how invaluable CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, has been to the communities that we both care so deeply about. But you said to me, and let me make sure I heard you correctly. No, you tell me. Where is housing? Where are the figures? Where is home ownership numbers for Black and brown communities, specifically Black communities, in relations to, let's say, 20 years ago?
The Latino home ownership rate has increased.
Okay. Measurably?
Measurably.
Okay.
However, the affordable housing rate for African Americans has decreased since CRA became law. And that to me is mind-boggling and something that needs to be addressed on a long-term basis.
Got it. How can our viewers find out more or engage with SCH? How can they reach out? What's your email address? What's your website? How do we get you?
So they could go to Spanish Coalition for Housing, SC4.org, and look us up and see. And also June 22nd at Plumbers Union Hall, we're going to have a fantastic homebuyer expo. And that's a great way. We expect a little bit over 400 people. That's an excellent way to get the process started.
And when we go to the website, we can find out more information on that event?
Correct.
Perfection. Paul Lopez, you know you are a friend like family in my head. It was a pleasure spending time with you. Every conversation we have, I always learn so much from both your talent, your skill, and your passion for this very important work. Thank you so much. This is not our first or last conversation. Appreciate it. We'll be right back with this month's Roundtable. Stay with us on the other side of the break.
Hello, I'm Rich Robbins, inviting you to join me for the series Soft and Tender. Soft and Tender celebrates the resilience and emotional depth of Black fatherhood, offering a powerful narrative on family bonds and ongoing challenges faced by Black communities.
As a father and as a parent in general, you have to know that you're not going to always understand, and that's okay.
Tune in on CAN TV, cable channel 19, or stream at cantv.org or the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Recently, Mayor Johnson made the trek to Springfield to meet with Governor Pritzker and other lawmakers in an effort to shore up support for increased school funding, as well as funding for the Chicago Bears' proposed Dome Stadium. Tall orders indeed, considering that the governor has gone on record rather assertively, stating that the Bears' stadium proposal is a non-starter, in large part because of the plan's large public funding component. As Johnson seeks a reported $1 billion in state funding for Chicago public schools, there is little indication that Pritzker will provide more than the minimum $350 million annual increases in funding for elementary and high schools, a target set in a 2017 education funding compromise under his predecessor, Republican Governor Bruce Rauner. According to a Chicago Tribune report, funding for Chicago's public transportation apparatus may have also been on Johnson's Springfield agenda. But Pritzker and Johnson differ on who should be leading the charge. To help us take a closer look at this trifecta of issues that continue to place the mayor and governor on opposite and increasingly more public sides of the issues, I'm joined by two newsroom regulars, two absolutely incredible journalists, Deborah Douglas and Francia Hernandez. Saddled with a projected budget right now, a projection of just under $400 million. They are transitioning to, this is the year where we started the transition to the partially elected school board. This is also the year that we are going to union talks with the very powerful Chicago Teachers Union, who are asking as an opening salvo, 9% increase annually in salary. Legislators just passed a bill that the CTU and I believe the mayor were against of putting the referendum on school closings, making any changes through 2027. The proposed budget for this year will move to a new model, moving away from per pupil to need funding. What's happening? How is all this going to work? Who wants to go first?
I'll just quickly say that everything is happening all at once. And a lot of it is our ideas that have been circulating for a very long time. The idea around funding schools according to needs, but then that lives in tension with the need to support selective schools and to support charter schools. So in a way it represents progress because some people, institutions are working to move the discussion from discussion to a position of action. It's just it really hurts and it's terrible that we can't decide what goes first and that there will have to be compromises made. But I'm glad that we're here. It's uncomfortable, but that's what it's all about. It's getting through the uncomfortable part to resolution.
Help me and other viewers feel an increased sense of comfort that while it's going to be difficult work, we've got the folks at the table with the right intention and the right skill set.
Well, I mean, anytime you have a strong union, that's good for schools, that's good for Chicago, and actually is good for the nation, for us to be standard bearers in the union cause. So that's where I'm coming from with that. Mayor Johnson came in with the mandate. He came in with a set of ideas. He came in with a set of values, and he is pursuing those values and those ideas. And I'm so happy that we don't have a governor who is checked out on Chicago and checked out on what's happening at the neighborhood level, and that who is interested and wants to exercise judgment along this range of decisions that have to be made. I know that has put the mayor and the governor in tension with each other, but I'm happy to see them duke it out so that we can move to the most ideal scenario.
I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
I absolutely, because one of the questions I'm going to talk about is the relationship between the mayor and governor, but you've just framed that for us brilliantly. Francia, what say you?
So I think it's very important to look at what people are saying, right? And how Chicagoans feel. And there is always, and it's going to happen in a city as large and diverse as Chicago, going to be those who say neighborhood schools should be funded and should be prioritized. And there are those who will say selective enrollment schools, magnet schools provide opportunities for Chicagoans that other schools don't provide, and we should keep them. There is no indication that these will close. There is a concern by some parents, who thought maybe if more funding is going to neighborhood schools, that then resources are constrained and they're not going to go to these selective enrollment schools that tend to be very good schools, right? But I think it's not a either or. It can be a scenario of yes and.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right. And one of the things that I think CPS has to look at is how are these schools, whether they're charter schools, whether they're selective enrollment, whether they're neighborhood schools, how are they serving students, right? And I think that's the concern from Chicagoans. What I hear consistently from social service providers or youth service organizations, even teachers and students, is our students, many of them, whether they're in high school, whether they're in elementary school, some part of these generations were affected by the pandemic, right? They had disruptions in their education. Their social emotional skills were not developed because they were behind the screen. They were at home. So there are many services and there are many needs, and hopefully these new formula will help address those needs. We also have more immigrant students coming to CPS, right? There's needs that are coming that are changing, and hopefully these changes and these new model and this new administration with a partially elected and then fully elected school board will address those issues that are at the core of what CPS should be doing, serving students.
Let's move on to CTA. Speaking of public challenges that the city, on the heels of a fantastic Block Club Chicago story about the death last summer of the 60, and if you have not, viewers, seen the story, find it. It's the death last summer of a 63-year-old CTA bus driver, and Tia, her name matters because there was an issue where when CTA did the plaque for her, it was the wrong name, and she, in her living, was very clear, as I am. It's Darrious, not Darrious. She was very clear, it's Antia, not Anita. But Antia Lyons passed out from heart complications behind the wheel of her bus while parked at the CPS bus terminal, later died after no one noticed that the bus had not gone out, it wasn't picking up folks, for nearly an hour. The governor and I believe Tribune and perhaps the business publication have all come out saying that now is the time for CTA CEO Dorvell Carter to step down. How long can the mayor afford to keep him in place with this sort of thing happening?
Well, that's kind of a leadership lesson, because if you're running a system where something like that can happen and someone could lay dead for that amount of time, it's just a metaphor for where are all the other holes in the system. And I can tell you at the street level that people feel like something is not going right with the CTA. People can feel it. And it could be based on, you know, an interaction or a series of interactions. But I think there's this collective feeling that that things are just not being, there's no accountability, and there's no attention to detail, and not a commitment to excellence. And
Who's driving the bus?
Right. Who's actually driving the bus? Thank you for that. Yeah. And so when something like that happens, and if you look at other indicators like surveys that show a drop off in service along many lines, that suggests.
Or the ghost, is it the ghost buses?
Yes, exactly. The organization that tracks ghost buses.
It screams an organization that is rudderless.
Exactly. Okay. And so Leadership 101 says, off with your head. And so you take responsibility, you step down, and you move to something. And people shouldn't have to marshal resources to affect that change. It's just that is how you show accountability.
What do you say?
Yes, I don't know how long the mayor can keep him in office. I think it was today or yesterday that news came out that some aldermen, I think it's 20 city council members, are pushing for either a resignation or a firing. Yeah. So this is urgent. This is important. Yeah. This affects millions of Chicagoans potentially every single day.
Absolutely.
It needs to happen. And the CTA's finances are not great. The CTA service is not great. The CTA reliability is not great. So there needs to be change.
Is the mayor risking his brand by not making a more definitive leadership decision? Is he risking his brand and legacy? What's the risk?
I think so.
Okay.
It's going to go on a list, and then people will do a mental checklist, and they'll be like, if they get to so many checks, it's going to click, and they're going to go one way or the other way, and then it can build up into a sort of like steamy indictment over time, which that's always the risk, especially in Chicago. But for Mr. Carter, who's running the system, it's like there is a level of personal responsibility and accountability that needs to happen at that level, and I respect that. That's a difficult job, especially when you have a funding shortfall, and it's such a massive system. But I think people feel like they are not being heard along a range of issues and a range of experiences. And so there's the work that needs to be done, but there is the sort of like signposting and signaling that needs to occur so people can feel heard.
Okay. Is there a scenario? So I need a 30-second response. Let's play this in our final section. Is there a scenario on this God's green earth that the Chicago Bears get a dome stadium in Chicago that is public funded?
Francia, you have any thoughts about that?
In 30 seconds? Okay. The mayor seems to be on board with the idea. The governor has said no.
The governor has said non-starter.
Right, non-starter, which I think could be no when there are so many other pressing issues and deficits in, the city. Just look at the budget and just look at the city budget, and then look at CPS. Look at what
we just talked about.
And CTA, right? Okay. And there are many Chicagoans who feel like this would be great, but the contract is also unclear, and it seems like the Bears would get to keep most of the revenue that comes from events held at the new stadium. So where is the benefit to Chicagoans? I think that's something that has to be weighed heavily and scrutinized, because it is taxpayers' dollars, right? And we want to see spaces, public spaces, but we want to see them equitably in the city while other major essential needs are being met.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those read the room moments. And people are just not for the okie doke anymore. The pride of having a major league team right outside your front door is just not enough anymore, especially when people are crying out for their fair share of resources vis-a-vis the attention being given to the migrant crisis and neighborhoods saying, hey, wait a minute, we've been here the whole time. What about us? We found out that we were essential workers, and we were so essential that we had to get up and go to work anyway. And the people have a long memory from just a short time ago. And so Chicagoans want their fair share of the resources. And this is, I'm with the governor. It's a non-starter. And this discussion that we're having across the nation about this public investment in billionaires is it's just mind-numbingly tone deaf. And research shows that, you know, the amount of jobs that are created don't really pay off over time, and the economic benefits don't pay off in the way that you think. There is a finite amount of money that individuals have in their budget. So if you put it here, then you don't put it there. So what are we really losing?
Got it. Listen, I have sat watching Andy sit with you all, having these incredible conversations. As a viewer, appreciate it. To have the privilege of sitting up here and have these conversations with you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Darrious.
Deborah, Francia, you know you all are the best, but your commitment, your skill, these are absolutely critical conversations. So thank you for sharing with our audience, because this is a time we're in. We are in a dash moment. So it is good to have voices who we can count on and listen to and discuss this. We'll see you soon, and we'll be right back with some final thoughts. Stay with us.
What's going on, Chicago? I'm Darrious, and I invite you to join me this season on The Table on Air. Take a quick look.
It's a duty, right, to remind people that we are deserving of this.
And that's how I strive to live my life, is just always be myself, regardless of what room I go into, just show my soul.
Join the conversation with us every week on CanTV Channel 19, streaming on cantv.org, and available on the CanTV Plus app.
The night after the 2016 presidential election, I sat in a leadership team meeting at Chicago Urban League, where I served as COO, urging my colleagues to not lose hope or allow those who would benefit from it trick us into becoming distracted by the ridiculousness that had been and will continue to be perpetuated by the president-elect and those who, despite anything resembling their better angels, chose to support him for reasons that were at best self-serving. 8 years later, I find myself making the same requests of myself, my colleagues, and you, our incredible viewers. Trust me, I get it. I get sometimes the overwhelming desire to just throw hands in the air and say, screw it all. We are a city, a state, and a country so deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, misogyny, xenophobia, and any number of other phobias. Why bother? Why bother to vote? Why bother to raise my voice in dissent? Why bother to gather with other like-minded people to get into good trouble together? These days, it simply hurts too much to hope. But in this dash moment, where vitriol and hatred and anger drives the actions of so many, in this dash moment where our democracy is hanging on by the absolute thinnest of threads, I feel the eyes of my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and other forebears looking down on me, imploring, don't you dare give up. Don't you dare give up on the understanding that it is darkest just before the light, that miracles big and small happen every day. Don't you dare stop fighting, stop standing up for those whose voices have been snatched from them. Don't you dare give up hope in the power of people to snatch progress from the closed jaws of racism and resistance. Until your very last breath, fight. You owe it to those who fought for you. Thank you for joining us, Chicago. Andy Zott will be back next month. Until then, stay well and well informed.